screen. There we go.
You got it?
We have success. All right. So I'm going to mute.
Perfect. Lovely. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining me. So reducing the risk of fall through gameplay is going to be a lot less stressful than just making sure I get the accept button on here. When we look at reducing the risk of falling, I wanted first of all to think about why falling is an issue, because when we're young, we fall all the time. The problem is, as we get older, when we fall, the stakes are higher. We are much more likely to get a fracture, and that's not great. So my hope today is that we can have a look at a way of inspiring people to keep moving, improve their movement, and reduce those risks. So first of all, I thought we'd start off with this beautiful little girl who is probably playing a first game to her. You may not remember playing this game yourself, but I'm sure you have played it at some point, or you've had the luxury of doing this with another child. And the reason I wanted to look at this is because prior to her being able to get to her mum, she went through a whole heap of learning and probably a whole heap of falling at the same time. But every time she fell, she had this compelling reason to move. It's a game. And her mum was there inspiring her, saying, come on, keep going, keep going. And when it got difficult, she probably tilted off balance and her body started to learn and react to the environment, to the task at hand. And each time it started to adapt to that environment and it became good at motor learning. So it was developing her motor learning skills, having the ability to create a sequence and have the right muscle power output at the same time. So our inter and intramuscular contractions, all in the right order, all allowing her to complete that task. So that is our first sort of opportunity of playing a game where we learn a new skill. But it's not enough to do that. Once we've learned that skill, she'll want to repeat it again and again. And then she'll want to do it in a little bit of a different way. Maybe mum's going to change the environment, and rather than doing it on a carpet, going to do it on grass, going to do it on concrete. And yes, there will be a few things flying around that might make it a little bit more challenging, but each time she's going to learn. And she'll end up on her bottom quite a few times. But as I said, it's not really a problem, although that does become a problem as we age. And that's what I want to try and stop if we can, at least prevent it. So over 30% of individuals over the age of 60 fall each year. And I believe we can reduce that percentage. Now, I did think that one of the biggest reasons for falls might be due to bone density. We know that we can help reduce the effects of bone density, but one of the biggest factors for falling, over 40% of people fall from balance-related issues. Now, I was talking to my mum the other day and she said, oh, you know, I can't really see in this left eye. I'm like, Mum, you really need to get that checked. That's going to affect your balance and increase your risk of falling. 14 million deaths in America, that's 1 in 4, which means that some of you will know people who have fallen. Let's try and see if we can reduce those risks. So we're going to start off with a game. It's called A Compelling Reason to Move. But if you're driving while you're listening to this, please don't do it. Okay, don't do it. But if you will, just join in with this little game for me. What I'd like you to do is to take your right hand, it's my left, but take your right hand and I would like you to reach it as far as you possibly can. Go on all the way up and back. Now, if you're like me and you're a movement coach, you're thinking exactly what is happening. Each bone is moving, each muscle is reacting to that bone. So we've taken our bone up and we've taken it to the right. And in order to stop that movement, what's happened here, We've gone into flexion, abduction, external rotation at that shoulder, which means the pec's going, hello, yes, I'm in and I'm awake. And with that, some of you may well have led to the left. You may well have got muscles reacting all around that spine and hips and shoulders. And depending on whether you're sitting down, your left foot probably collapsed into the floor and you've got more dorsiflexion, eversion and abduction. We know that because we're movement coaches and we spend our time watching and predicting movement. And that is an essential skill. But if you've been in the industry for as long as I have, then you may have heard that being called a chain reaction. But I'm going to oppose that tonight because I don't think it is a chain reaction. When we take that arm up, we're human. It's not just a set of dominoes. It's not just a car with moving parts. So bear with me. I don't want to freak anybody out on this, but I want you, so it is just make believe, but I'd like you to take your arm up again, another game, but this time as you go up, I want you to imagine there is a 8-legged friend, okay? A bird-eating spider to the corner there. Now, I've practiced this a few times, and every time I do that, I still get a visceral reaction. My body wants to move away from that spider, and I know it's not even there. And some of you will have had a reaction yourself. So what happened was we have information that's coming to our body the whole time. We're getting sensory feedback. Has something pinched us? What's the temperature like? Is it hot? Is it cold? Did somebody do a little whiz pop? Whatever it is, you're constantly getting this information. And when it becomes important enough, it crosses a threshold. And when it crosses that threshold, we call this a trigger. And the moment you get a trigger, you get a chemical reaction, a hormonal reaction, and your muscles, you'll feel them tense up. Now, they might all happen together. This happens for about 6 seconds, and we call this an emotion. Emote, to move. So we had the game, the target, let's reach up and across. And as we did that, we saw this great big huge bird-eating spider, and something happened that took every muscle in my body in the opposite way to that target. We have a central nervous system, and it's constantly anticipating the scenario that we're in. Do I like this scenario? Is the other person their friend or foe? Is this dangerous? Is this an opportunity? What did I have for dinner last night? Did I have any sleep? I'm going to have a little check. What's my mum ever told me about spiders? I'm remembering the time that my brother grabbed a spider and threw it at me, and I'm still dealing with it. So I propose that movement is way more important than just a domino effect. And what we did here is we used a game to refresh what's happening when we get that feeling. So we had the emotion, we've had that trigger, we've had the checklist. Now we need to make an action. So from that action, is this an opportunity? Oh, I love my little furry friend. I'm going to give him a little stroke. Or am I getting the out of there? The action you take is really important because that reinforces what the feeling is. This is really important when we get to working with clients who are experiencing chronic pain, because if they're getting a trigger that's giving them the emotion to get away from the thing, and we're taking the action that makes them continue to be fearful of this movement, we're reinforcing a feeling. And these litter of feelings, these herds of feelings, they become an experience. And what I want to make sure today is that we are giving our clients the best experience possible, the one that makes them feel brave, the one that makes them feel awesome, the one that makes them go, do you know what? I think that might be an opportunity. It's not even there. Henry just wanted to say sorry because he's nice, really. So how do we take a game and use this to create a compelling reason that has purpose for our client? We don't want it to just be a series of exercises that somebody has to do. We want to make sure that it does what we want it to do, to help our clients become more skillful, but not in one place, in lots of different places, so that they can move in different environments and different speeds. So what I use is the faster process, and this is something that's helped my students, and my hope is it can help you. Number one, we meet our client, and at that point, we need to get our client and we need to know, what do they want? What's their movement goal? I'm not a doctor, so I'm not there to solve medical issues. My goal is purely, what's their movement goal? How can I assist and create an experience that makes them want to come back? Because no one squat, no bicep curl has ever changed a life, but consistency and moving in different ways has. So I want to make sure I'm the right person for the job. If there are any medical conditions that need to be addressed, I refer out. If somebody has any form of unexplained pain, I do not guess. I refer out. This is very close to my heart because I've had somebody who did have pain, and if they'd had a trainer that just went, oh, you'll be fine, give them exercises to get over it, when actually there was an underlying disease that needed to get treatment. So please don't guess. Once you've done that, they're normally really happy and they come back to us. Now they might have a medical condition, or they might have a reason why they're experiencing pain or injury. And we want to know everything about that, the stories they've been told, so that when we get to the point where we're addressing how the brain will react to things, we can make sure that we're putting them in the right story, the right environment. And to do that, I need to go to my research. And I get really excited about the research and I'd love to go into this, but I haven't got enough time. But what you do need is a quick process to help you sieve through the amount of studies that you need to read. It's not about cherry picking one study, quoting one study. It's got to be about reading what your client reads. It's got to be about knowing whether it's relevant, whether it's been done on guinea pigs. Lots of pelvic floor studies on guinea pigs. But anyway, that point we need to measure our clients. So what I mean here is assess, because I need to know where my client currently is, what they're capable of, how much pressure they can put on that movement. So it's about selecting the right exercise. That's our biomechanics. And I want to know, can they do it for long enough in order to get their goal at the moment? And how can we improve on that? So that's what energy system we're looking at. Do we want to be working anaerobic? Do we want to be working aerobically? So that's our energy system. And now I just need to check what skills they're capable of. And that's about the central nervous system challenging that brain, constantly reacting and learning. And then we want to be able to pressurize it, so in our performance. And that's when we create our program, which is our compelling reason to move. And I hope at the end of this will be your games. This is Karen, and Karen came to me, I think it's at least 8 years ago, and she'd just been diagnosed with osteopenia, and that went on to osteoporosis. And at the time, I remember thinking, right, well, I better get on with this research business. And I was quite new to it then, and it was a little bit daunting. But the interesting part was Karen was experiencing chronic pain, and I thought the two were linked. And when I went and did the research, they weren't. And so when it came to her goal, there weren't any movements that she couldn't actually do. I couldn't find any exercises that she shouldn't do. Everything did lead to the fact that she needed to move more, to work at a moderate to high intensity. Walking is good for hips. It's not good, unfortunately, for spine or wrists or anything like that. So we do need to get some moderate to high intensity in. But loss of bone density is responsible for 15% of fractures. from low trauma falls age 60 to 80. So low trauma falls, not a high distance. And so we've already discussed that 40% of falls were actually from balance issues. So this is a big surprise to me. It isn't to say that bone density isn't important. It absolutely is. But we thought more women had osteoporosis. Why? Because more women fall. But 1 in 3 men still have osteoporosis. And we know as fitness professionals that if we can get our clients stamping or getting a little bit more impact in, we can help reduce those risks. That's only 15%. So what are the other things that might potentially cause a fall? One of them is being unlucky. And this is like if you're trying to do injury prevention, sometimes you just can't prevent the bus coming that you didn't see, or the small child when you're skiing sliding straight into your ACL joint. Unlucky. But what we can do with our loved ones is identify any balance issues through medication, through illness, and get them to seek medical advice. What we can do is if we know that they've got any hearing issues, any sight issues, we can make sure that that is addressed. Mum, if you are here, I've got your number down. She told me that she had blurred vision in her left eye. So go and get that sorted out. Make sure that you've got lighting. That will help. And also if you know, in a bathroom, that type of thing, make sure that you've got mats on the floor so that you don't sort of slip over. And I'm saying this because even yesterday, my client said to me that her 89-year-old mum said, can you help me with the curtains? And by the time she went over to visit, the curtains were already up. So she was already balancing on a chair. No, that's the one thing that we could probably avoid. Sadly, my client recently slipped on a leaf and she fell and she has broken her patella. And in the short amount of time, this was at Christmas, it's been heartbreaking to see her lose her self-efficacy and worry about moving. I mean, I know it's early days, but it's still just, you know, really hard. And she was jumping around and she was doing everything she could. She was just unlucky. So that brings me to previous falls. Previous falls. This is a big one for us. And so I really want us to focus on it. If you fall, you can become more anxious about your movement, more fearful. And the problem with that is it makes us more conscious of our movement. So if you do know someone who's fallen, you've probably heard them say, I'm being really careful now. And that would seem logically the most sensible thing to do. And that's where research is really helpful, because not always is logic the right thing. If you're conscious about your movement, you're more likely to predict the height of stairs being higher than they are, making a mistake and increasing your risks of falling again. What we actually need to do is the reverse and find ways to move unconsciously. There's some really interesting research coming out from Dr. Rich Masters, who's spending time looking at different ways in which we can help people to unconsciously learn. And it's not just as we age that we feel this. If you've done any sort of sports to any high level, you may too have experienced it. I remember when I first got the opportunity to do rounders, I was like, yes, and I'm ready. And the ball came and I just froze and missed it because I was so concerned that I would mess up. I was too in my head. And we need to find that way of removing that fear. So go and get back to that spider moment when we reached up. Can we help the brain when it goes through that check system of saying, last time you went out on the pavement, you slipped over? Can we help it reassess that and go, do you know what? You are strong. You've got the lighting. It's not wet now. We can do this. Can we create a game that builds that confidence? This is Karen again here. And the final one is, if we don't have the skill to be able to move in the environment at that pace, then we're likely to fall. And this is where I think we can really make a difference. You may have already done your reps and sets and thought about ways in which you can help your clients get stronger. But have we thought about creating environments that require our clients to overcome hurdles, put a little bit of skin in the bone, if you like? You've got to run out from your centerpiece out to these 8 different cones. And I want you to go to the blue cone, the red cone, and the yellow cone. So we're going to add a little bit of cognition in there and go, and I want you to reverse that. Yellow cone, green cone, blue cone. Right, do it again, but this time, let's go faster. I also chose the hula hoop on this one because one of the things that was really interesting to me was the amount of studies that talk about reactive balance rather than just balance. And so with a hula hoop, what you're having to do is you're having to react to the center of your center of gravity moving. And what Karen does really well on this is she starts to take her feet out of the faster hub, which has got numbers and triangles on it. And so she's adding extra targets to that game and still overcoming it and enabling herself to do that. Pretty impressive. So we know that we need to get strong. We know that this will help. Strength training is going to help strengthen our bones. We also know that as we age, we're not going to be able to synthesize protein at the same rate. And so we need to make sure that those muscles are strong. So we need to do our strength training, and that's going to help. It's going to help around those joints with that movement. But if we're, say, just doing our deadlifts in one plane of motion or just doing our squats, it's taking away a golden opportunity that we have to be able to take more movements and work our bones in different positions. And the other thing is, our clients don't come for the sets and reps. They come for the way you make them feel, not just in the session, but 3 days afterwards. So it's really important that we know what strong means to our client, because we can use that in the game. We can use that in the game. So strong to some of my clients means press ups. And I get that because that's a way of controlling our body and feeling strong. But for some of my clients, it's that ability to be able to run around in a playground looking after grandchildren. And so if that's the case, I need to make sure that we do the thing that gets the muscles strong, but we also do the thing that feels like running around the park. It's also good to get that cardiovascular training in. It is one of the few elements of fitness that has been proven to improve longevity. So definitely want that in there as well. We need power. Again, that's another great word. If we actually asked each of us to describe what power was to us, I'm sure we'd have a whole heap of different definitions. So I want to know what it means to my client. That's the important thing. We may know, right, okay, so coming out of a squat, that's going to require power, or maybe it's transferring our body weight, or reaching, or throwing, or kicking, or doing pickleball. And I thought I would throw this one in because pickleball was going crazy in America, is going wild here in Wimbledon, and it's a game. It's got a set of rules. It's got an environment that you have to work in. It's taken from the game of tennis and our table tennis. And what I love about it, it's a bit slower than tennis. So if you do find as you're aging, your reaction times are getting a little bit slower, you can still play pickleball and get the same emotional feelings of joy and being with your community. You can still do all of those things and you can still keep your skills moving, but you've just got a little bit more time over it. So I love a bit of pickleball, I think it's fab. Now, I mentioned already that if you want to strengthen the bones, walking is limited only to the hips. We need moderate to high intensity. Then I came across this study and I started off being really excited. And like I said, it's never about one study, but this one was kind of cool. It was a random controlled trial that got women to hop 50 times a day for 6 months. That's quite a lot, by the way, because I tried it. So you were to hop on one leg using the other leg as a driver. One group did it 7 times a week. Another group did it 4 times a week. And the final group did it twice a week. Unfortunately, it only strengthened your hip if you were doing it 7 days a week. That's 50 times 7 days a week. Fortunately, if you wear a weighted vest, you could just take that down to 3 days a week and get the same effects. But sadly, when I got deeper into the study, I would say that the people they tested it on were not of the age group that I wanted. I think it was 33 plus 11 years or something like that. So not as exciting as I wanted it to be, but hey ho. And the last thing, I'm laboring a point here. This is about reactive balance. Time and time again, there were correlation studies that brought me back to Tai Chi. And I will point out it was a correlation. And as I dug into those studies, some of them weren't great. But I think what it was that it has in common with functional training, aerobics, was moving in different ways and shifting your body weight. It's also fantastic for community. The slight problem is that the uptake for Tai Chi is bigger in countries like Hong Kong, and where we see more falls happening between 60 and 80, in Hong Kong, you're not considered old until you're 90. So we could maybe borrow some of their things, but I think the thing to take away was reactive balance. So if you want to do that in the form of Tai Chi, brilliant. But if you want to do it in the form of a game with reach, which makes you go from one side to another and react to your balance, and that is going to be great. Yes, there we go. So how do we start to put this into a game setting? So I thought, well, we'll come up with start games then. So to start off with, I want to create an environment where my client is successful. So this may mean that the first couple of times you want to give them a demonstration, or you might want to show a video or something like that. And this is where, in the past, I probably used too many intrinsic coaching cues with my clients. So I'd be saying things like knees in line with toes, shoulders pulled back and down, that type of stuff, or squeeze your glutes. And that is an intrinsic coaching clue. And actually, if we start to quickly move away from that and use our external environment to help our client self-select, we go back to that unconscious learning. So the first two, you can use a bit of video analysis, you can use those intrinsic coaching cues, but then we want to get onto a target. So a target is that way of going, it's clear enough that you know that this is what you need to do. You need to get to A, you need to get to B, you need to get over here. But we want to do it in a way that makes sure the client selects the right sequencing and the right power. So they're getting that motor skill that we want to improve and work on. From that point, we let them adapt, okay? So we let them have a go. So adapt, improvise, however you like to say it. You say, I want you to reach that cone over there and you were expecting a lunge and they do a forward roll. Impressive. It wasn't what you thought they would do. So from that, you will respond and you will change the environment, the constraints of the game. So it doesn't need to be about, well, I need you to take your leg back, knees in line with toes, shoulders pulled back, making sure you're bracing your abs. No, I'm now going to change the target so they know and add a rule to it. I want you to use one leg and I want you to get to the target, touch it and get back out again. So we're going to let that adapt and respond. Once they've started to do these skills in different places, different environments, and they're able to consistently use the motor skill that you wanted, or as we call on motor skill application specialists, when we go deeper into dynamic theory, then with that, we think, right, we're going to throw you off course with some new targets. That could be dual learning. So it could be, right, while you're doing that, you've got to juggle, or while you're going to walk, I'm going to get you talking. And that's a really interesting one to try. If you do know anybody that's recently had a fall and quite nervous about walking, just start to talk to them. And if they stop, your game is going to be keep them walking and talking, because they are going to start to unconsciously walk, feel more comfortable, and that's just a simple game. So start thinking about successful movements, driving to the target, getting that sequence, the right muscle in the right order with the right amount of power. An opportunity to adapt. Let them show you their way of solving this movement puzzle, because that's all it is. But from that, respond to it, make it more challenging, and then throw them off. And the other thing I like to add with a throwing off is it could be as simple as peril. So today I had a client and he was throwing a bag, and the peril was if he didn't get it in the first range, then he had to do a punishment. But if he got it into the last range, he was allowed to punish me. So you can see that created a compelling reason to punish me. This is Damaris, and you can see around her I've used a selection of cones. And what I call these is constraints. So I had her jumping forward and I wanted her to get her feet on the inside of the yellow cones. Now, because of that constraint, I didn't need to give her much more instruction to that. I could then tell her to go out to the side of her right and she would overcome and come over that hurdle, or out to the left and step over that hurdle. When I'm asking her to lunge back, I'm narrowing her options of where she can put that foot. So you can use all sorts of different targets and play around with these games. I just want to reiterate, the very first game, we saw our child moving and they had mastered that motor learning pattern of being able to move straight. So if that's the skill your client has that they're successful at, so let's say a squat, then we would move towards the performance side of the faster skill to performance continuum. And that's where we're really after the energy systems and that muscle adaptation. So it's where we're going to add load, it's where we're going to add speed, volume, all of those lovely things. But here's the thing, if we just repeat practice in that area, one of the things that I used to do, what happens is we start to get fatigued, and that's a feeling. Our central nervous system is starting to say, oh, I think you've done enough now. And it's at that point we need to go down that continuum back to the bottom end where the skill is, but we've got more variable options. So now this is more about challenging the central nervous system. So this is where we can add all our wonderful cognitive drills. It's where we can add a squat that has arms going all over the place, that could be reaching up high, or it could be reaching down low. knowing that, oh, if I take that hand down low, I'm going to get my client more into their glute. If you wanted them to feel the side of their bottom, you might want to have one hand low and one hand up and across. So you can use those targets to help your client experience new movements, get confident, and all of this is unconscious. Squat down there for me. Good. And go out. This is my mum, and she had a fall, and she is inspired and compelled to move for two very strong reasons. One is Prosecco, and the other one is watering her garden. So when I went round to see her, the first thing I did was, she had been told by her physiotherapist that she couldn't squat, which worried me, because if you think about the spider moment, she really thought that she couldn't bend down and squat. And she could. She was going to the toilet, she was driving, she was sitting, she was getting out of her sofa. So I played a little game, and the game was very, very simple. How many times can I get mum up and down and out of a chair? And to do that, I just moved her Prosecco from the kitchen to the living room to the day room, moving it around until finally she said, "Do you keep moving my Prosecco?" And I was like, "Yes." So then we changed the game, and we filled her watering can with water, and she had to squat, and then I would say a number and she would have to react to the number that I've said and go and water the plant outside of there. I think we've got time for a very quick game. I can't see you, so I'm going to have to trust you on this one. What I'd like you to do very, very quickly is, I'm going to say 1. And then I'm not going to know if you're doing this, so Jonathan, you can help me out if they do. But on 2, what I want you to do is I want you to do a little squat. And on, I'm going to say 3. And then the next time, I'm really just doing this on my own, you're going to say 1, and I'm going to squat and go 3. So let's try it off. So 1, and you go. And I go 3. And then the next time you go 1, 3. Now what we can do is we can replace 1 and 3 with a different exercise. So we can go arms up, 1, squat 2, turn round 3. So it goes, I go, you go, and I go. Now you go, and I go, and you go. Turn round. So very, very simple to put together, but we knew what success was, first of all, by practicing it. We knew what our targets were. We knew what skills we needed to do those simple movements. We were able to adapt it, change it, make it harder. The next step would be to add some peril, which might look like you jumping up and down saying, "I'm a banana," something like that. Just want you to have a little look at this picture for a moment. In the past, I would have been overcoaching, and I would have been using intrinsic coaching cues in order to help my client learn. I was doing the best that I could. And I probably would have been right next to my client like this. How's our client feeling about stepping up that step? Particularly bearing in mind what we know about unconscious learning, that if we're overthinking something, the likelihood, the risk increase. What I would propose here, how about the client moves closer to a wall, has a lower step, that's able to step up and down without concern. The trainer standing next to her, so she's there if she's needed. That way, she takes away any possibility of this woman reading that her hands are on her arms. Because why? Because this is tough, because this is difficult, because it's risky. those things are going to feed fear. And we want to do everything that we can. So simply by overhauling our language and thinking, are we using words like tight, weak, dysfunctional? Can we use things like you're strong? Look how well you did. Or start off with a step that's so low, they're not even worried about it. They're stepping up, and gradually we increase that obstacle size, that step size, and they're learning to adapt their motor skills. They're also getting that reaction from their body, that change, and they've got this. And before you know it, they're going, I can't believe I can do this. You go, I know, these games are good, aren't they? So experience is essential. And what experience are we giving our clients? Are we building them up for success, or are we setting them up for a fall? And my hope is that we can start to think about the games that we play and the opportunities we give our clients to become and feel successful and strong in their movements. So the different types of games that we can come up with, we've got target driven. So it's all about where you get to. It could be a low target. So I sometimes say you kick to the height of a little orange person, because I watch Willy Wonka, or you go to a knee height, or it could be hip height, or it could be shoulder height. You could be doing a squat, but pushing your bottom out at the same time, and take that into different cones. So using either a body part for a target, it could be height, it could be a distance, it could be a cone, your environment. Obstacles. These are awesome, particularly with clients that are struggling with fear around falling, because we can make them very, very easy, and we can make them fun and build on the complexity of those obstacles. Quantitative. So how many of a thing can they do and complete? So that might be, I've got a ball and you've got to place that ball on certain cones, or you've got these bean bags and you're going to do a press up, but each time you do it, you're going to take the bean bag and match it to the color cone. And that's great because it keeps someone doing it for longer. Reaction. So if there's one thing you take away today, I want it to be balance isn't about standing on one leg. I knew there was something I wanted to say on that balance slide. It's not just about standing on one leg. It is the reactive balance that's important. And even studies where people were on wobble boards was not as good as reactive balance. So putting people in that opportunity of reaching as far as they can, so they have to react to that shift in their center of gravity. Just realized if you probably might not be able to, there we go. Karen is here with her client because she loved what we did so much. She became a faster trainer expert. She's using the step as an obstacle to step down from. She's using the cones to get to and from. So brilliantly bringing in that balance, that reactive balance. This is another trainer of ours. This is James, and he's a faster trainer expert, and he uses games every day, both with his one-to-one clients and also taking it to care homes, which is just fantastic to see, because we're getting the community, the cognitive challenges, we're getting that strength, we're getting that cardiovascular adaptations, but most of all, we're putting it all together using the environment, using our bodies. This is Peter, and his client had a motorbike accident. He broke 7 ribs, no, I think it was 11 ribs, his pelvis and his coccyx. and brilliantly here put together. Peter is using a quantitative drill. He's also got the gripper bag under his foot to change the environment, which is going to make that challenge even harder for his reactive balance. This is Steph in the US, and she is here with Carolyn and Greg, and they're going through their little hurdles. But what I loved about this was Steph was telling me that she then brought in an extra level, which was a spoon with an egg on it for egg and spoon race. And Carolyn was so concerned that she didn't drop her egg, but she was going through the hurdles and the ladder with no problem whatsoever. So that was fantastic. Having that opportunity to focus on a different task made her even better at the one that Steph was getting her to do. Now, I wish that I could give you 15, 17 different games that you can take away and use tomorrow with your client, the 5 best exercises for. But if I do that, we're missing the point. This is all about who's your client, what do they like, what makes them tick, where are they inspired to move, what are the movement puzzles that will get them excited and start talking about you as the expert. So I hope that what you can take is, from what we've looked at today, new ways of doing what you do already really well, but just honing those skills and making it into a game and adding some peril. With your athletes, then you may want to add more time drills, but that's not something I want to do with those that have had a previous fall.
Bonkers.
That was Raf, and I'd like to finish on Raf. He has polio and MS, and when he first came to me, his goal was to be able to fall confidently. It was to be able to get out of bed without support. He is amazing. Everything I put to him, he just soaks it up. But what he didn't want to do was walk without his crutches. And by using gameplay and taking his mind off what he was doing, he was using that Viper to get that ball back to me, loving it. He always likes to have a little dance within our tasks. And he's just absolutely awesome. So thank you very much. There is so much that we've had to cover, and this is just a touch of what we've really just a little bit of the icing on top of what goes into building experience. So I hope that you've got some questions for me, and that just maybe you've got a few things that you can take away, do on Monday, and think about how to change and implement games.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joanne. And we'll get to questions in just a moment. That was tremendous. There's a couple things I'm going to highlight from this that I think are particularly exciting for people to take away. But I think it's also just these questions here you have. What did you take away? What will you do differently as a result? And then how to implement that, the next steps. Just everybody mull that over for just a moment. I'm going to show my screen. We're going to do a couple of promos, and then we'll get to the questions. We're going to jump into a promo for our next webinar, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. We've got Devon Palermo presenting Adaptive Fitness Level 1, transfer training and safeguarding for the adaptive client. He's a adaptive fitness specialist, so if you're interested in working with that population, he's got some really good ideas. You'll be sure to want to check that out. You can sign up for that or any other of our upcoming webinars by going to medfitclassroom.org. Find the online education banner at the very top of the page and find the submenu to the 2024 webinars. And then also, if you'd like to see any of our past webinars, you can do so through medfittv.org, which is available as a monthly or as an annual subscription. And it is also included as part of your MedFit Network membership. And if you don't know what that is, MedFit Network is a directory of fitness professionals that have the relevant skills to deliver fitness coaching and instruction while also helping people navigate whatever medical conditions or concerns they're having at the same time. And the people in your area will be more likely to find you on that directory because they're more likely to find us when they do the searches. We have a Google AdWords grant that gets us put near the top of search results when people are looking for medically relevant fitness. And if you want to be in that directory, just be sure to check out medfitnetwork.org, and that also includes past webinars as well. I'm going to put Joanne's contact info up here so you can just kind of absorb this a little more slowly as we're going through the questions. But first, I do want to highlight to everyone, I think one of the most powerful parts of your presentation, Joanne, is how you started it. And I think that too often with balance training, it's coming from a place of fear, and it's coming from a place of, oh, there's a thing we want to avoid. And just like that little girl going to the mother, when we put balance in the context of the gameplay or the thing we want to do that's fun, that's appealing, that we want to go towards, it gives us a sense of achievement rather than a sense of avoiding disaster. And avoiding disaster is never going to be a long-term motivator for fitness. It might get you started, but avoiding a negative is very often not going to lead to long-term compliance, because all it does is keep us focused on the negative outcome. And I think that's an important point, that a lot of times when people become concerned about balance, they're afraid of what a fall does for them rather than what competency in balance will do for them, and how it opens up your world and gives you more opportunities to share things. I think it's hard to overstate the significance of that concept when we are presenting balance training to people. And I'd secondly like to highlight how you emphasize just us moving away from this single leg approach to balance training. Not that it's bad, it's just that the reactive balance is far more relevant, far more realistic, and far more lifelike. And one of my big pet peeves in the world of performance is a single leg balance test, because you're almost creating failure. You're engineering failure in a way. And in that, if you ask someone who's never weight trained to do a 400-pound or an almost 200-kilo deadlift, you're engineering failure because you're making it so hard. Just like 30 seconds with your eyes closed on a single leg, we don't do anything with our eyes closed. So a lot of our testing doesn't even make any sense.
No.
And thirdly, I don't even normally talk this much at the end of these, but this was so good, I have to highlight some of these things. It's good to occasionally lose our balance while we're developing our balance. And that's something I think you highlighted as well. You don't even want perfect performance, because the only way we get stronger is by making our muscles temporarily weaker through strength training. The only way we get better endurance is by making ourselves temporarily out of breath through aerobic training. And similarly, the only way we'll ever get better at balance is by temporarily losing it, not by having an injurious fall, but by just having that momentary loss of balance, and then we regain it. And if it's too easy, it's not going to be beneficial. If it's too hard, it's demotivating. Okay. That's enough for me. I'm going to jump into the questions, but I really, really liked some of the stuff that you brought up in there. There was a question from Michael, and let me pull this up. He had a question about muscle quality, and it was talk about the concept of muscle quality. What makes for good versus poor muscle quality? Michael wants to know.
For me, it is going back to the client, what success is to them. And so I want to create an environment that they can become successful in what that means to them. Because as I said, a test might be arbitrary to a position, whereas if they want to be able to get in and out of a chair, then they need to have the right sequencing and the right power at that point.
Sure.
That's a great question.
There's another part I don't think we can overlook, and I think that's that one of your mother's big motivators is Prosecco. That was a particularly enjoyable part. I wasn't sure that you said Prosecco at first, but then when you said it again, I was like, oh yeah, she actually did say Prosecco is one of her mother's big motivators. So I'm thinking maybe you should even put Prosecco in the watering can, and then she can actually have a drink of that. So you can combine the two things that she loves, the gardening and the Prosecco. We have another, well, it's actually not really a question here. It's more of a compliment from Bob Esqueri. Hey, Bob, got some names I know in here, Annette Lang and Lawrence Biscontini and Chris McGrath. So hello to my fitness friends around the world as well. Bob just says, great presentation. Love the case studies with the customer-centric focus. I have a question for you too. So let's say you have someone who's really consciously aware of their need for balance training. In fact, it's one of those things that sometimes people don't notice until they lack it. You go through your whole life not thinking about balance. It's unlike strength and power, we consciously seek those goals, but balance is the kind of thing that we only notice it in its absence. But once someone notices it, that it's begun to diminish for themselves, they typically will seek someone like us out and request it, but they're also afraid at the same time. How do you help navigate their mindset to one of opportunity and positivity rather than one of fear and restriction? Because as you pointed out, that being like an overly nervous driver makes you more likely to get into an accident kind of thing is also relevant for balance training.
The studies from Dr. Rich Masters are awesome, and it's in early stages, but it really brings it back down to experience. So what we get that luxury of doing is changing the environment and bringing the task back to something that's achievable. So it could be that you're starting off with someone and they're throwing a bag to you, a weighted bag or something like that, because they're going to be reacting to that bag and then building on those positive experiences. So that's why we've got that start to keep going through that. And then once you've become successful, how can we adapt it? How can we change it? And, you know, there's so much I wanted to say. I mean, it's just like, I think that the thing that was really shocking to me was that the likelihood of falling once that we get to 60 increases 13-fold, but it's only 2-fold through the lack of bone density. So this balancing, we just can't do it enough, and that reactive balance. So putting people in a scenario where they're not failing, but they're getting the feedback. And that's what I like about a game, that if those targets are clear enough, they know they've been successful. And so if they want to go to one leg and move on to a target, if they've missed that target, they get that early feedback, and that creates the change.
Good. So what I think I'm hearing you say is, if you have someone who's a little bit afraid of balance, although they're consciously seeking improvements in balance, by taking the focus off balance and making it a little bit more focused on throwing them a little weighted bag or something that where they're not staring balance in the face, so to speak, but they're getting to train it while not directly focusing on it. It kind of takes away some of the fear because they're not looking directly at it. Is that a good way to phrase that?
Yeah, and I think that that's where getting to know your client is essential, the things that they like, and getting past the hurdles of fear. What are the things they'd like to be able to do again? So if it could be, you know, to go and play with the grandchildren, or the gameplay, whether it's pickleball, that sort of thing. So we're taking off the focus of balance training, but we're incorporating that into what we're doing.
Very good. Okay, everyone, that's going to about bring us to, we have just another question coming in right as I was about to wrap up. Hold on, let me check this out. Let's see. Jasmine says, how would you define balance as a skill for development purposes? Okay, that's going to be our last question, then I'll close this out.
So that would be what we call a training intention. And what you're doing is reacting to external forces coming at you with that. Could be one way of doing it. But it's the ability to respond, as well as I said, the shift in your center of gravity. That's the big key. Yeah,
that's true. Being able to move through life, it makes balance training realistic. So everyone, I want to thank you for giving us
walking so tough, because it's actually a glorified trip. And each time you do it, you're responding to that shift in gravity. Sorry, Jonathan.
That's okay. It's controlled falling. So yeah. So
I say someone's running and they say they've got tight hamstrings, I'm like, that's good, because if they weren't, you'd be on the floor. So they just were a reminder to stop you just a little sooner, which is great. Right. Reduce the fear.
Hey everyone, I want to thank you for giving us the gift of your time and attention and energy, and be sure to take advantage of the discount if you're interested in the motor skill application specialist course that Joanne is involved with there. You got the information there, and just follow her on social media or just check out her website. She's a really lovely soul, has a lot of good information out there, so be sure to check her out, and go to medfitclassroom.org, online education menu at the top, drop down to 2024 webinars, sign up for any of our future webinars, and we'll hope to see you again at another webinar soon. That's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Joanne to give us any parting thoughts of wisdom, and then we will wrap up for the day.
Thank you. Well, thank you for spending your time with me. I think for me, reduce fear and think about the experience that you're giving. We are not a bag of bolts. If you've got children and you've ever tried to drag a child in the direction they don't want to go, you might be getting them to reach that way, but they're going the opposite. So make sure that we are giving experiences that encourage and inspire people to want to solve movement puzzles. Go play.
Well said. Thank you, Joanne. Bye, everyone. We'll see you soon on another webinar.
Thank you.